In the coastal village of Ndarama, life revolved around a once pure river. The villagers, however, grew careless, polluting the waters they depended on. Unbeknownst to them, the river was protected by Nyamwezi, the sea goddess. She cursed the men to sleep with her twin daughters before their wives could conceive. The Nyama Twins were alluring but dangerous, drawing men to their fate. Alibi, a young fisherman, struggled with his loyalty to his wife, Mermaid. As desperation grew, Alibi faced an impossible choice, love or duty. The wives of Ndarama united to confront the Nyama Twins and break the curse. In a fierce battle, they fought for their families and their future. With courage and unity, they overcame the goddess's wrath and reclaimed their lives. In a small coastal village nestled between the towering cliffs and the roaring sea, there lived a community of people whose lives revolved around the bountiful waters that surrounded them. This village, known as Ndarama, was sustained by a river that snaked its way through the heart of the land, providing the villagers with fresh fish and clean water for their crops. For generations, the people of Ndarama had lived in harmony with nature, grateful for the riches the river and the sea provided. Yet, as the years passed, the villagers grew complacent. They began to take the river for granted, dumping waste and other refuse into its once pristine waters. The river, once sparkling and pure, became polluted, its vibrant life dwindling. Despite the warnings of the village elders, the people continued to defile the river, ignorant of the consequences that would soon follow. Unknown to the villagers, the river was under the protection of Nyamwezi, the powerful sea goddess who watched over the land from her watery domain. Nyamwezi, who had existed since time immemorial, loved the river dearly and was angered by the disrespect shown to it by the villagers. She decided it was time to teach them a lesson, one they would never forget. One foggy morning, as the villagers of Ndarama woke to go about their daily routines, they discovered that something was terribly wrong. A strange and foreboding silence hung in the air, and when they tried to move, they found themselves paralyzed. It was as though an invisible force held them in place, preventing them from going about their normal chores. Panic spread quickly through the village. The people cried out in fear, but no one could understand what was happening. Soon all became clear when a shimmering figure rose from the river's depths. It was Nyamwezi herself, the sea goddess, her eyes glowing with anger and determination. Her presence was immense, her voice like thunder as it echoed across the village. "You have desecrated my river with your filth and waste," Nyamwezi declared. Her voice reverberated through the hearts of the villagers, filling them with dread. "For your sins you shall pay a heavy price." The villagers stood frozen in terror as the goddess continued. "From now on, before any woman in this village can bear a child, her husband must first lay with the Nyama Twins, the sea children who dwell in the depths of the ocean. Only then can your wives conceive." With those words, Nyamwezi vanished beneath the waters, leaving the villagers horrified and shaken. The curse had been cast, and they knew that their lives would never be the same. The villagers knew of the Nyama Twins, Omatunde and Omabola, the daughters of the sea goddess. Legends spoke of their beauty, long flowing hair, shimmering scales, and eyes that reflected the deep blues and greens of the ocean. The twins had always been mysterious figures, appearing only occasionally to mortals and enchanting those who were lucky, or unlucky, enough to see them. At first, the men of Ndarama were hesitant to fulfill the strange and unsettling demand placed upon them by Nyamwezi. The idea of laying with the Nyama Twins before their wives could conceive was repugnant to many. But as time passed, and their wives grew desperate to bear children, the men had no choice but to submit to the curse. The Nyama Twins eagerly embraced their newfound power, using their seductive charms to lure the men of the village to the water's edge. Their enchanting voices could be heard echoing across the waves, drawing even the most reluctant men into their embrace. Each night, the men of Ndarama would gather by the shore, waiting their turn to submit to the twins' desires. For some, the ritual became a source of excitement. a twisted sense of privilege that came with ensuring the continuation of their bloodlines. But for others, it was a burden, a source of deep shame and guilt. One such man was Alabi, a young fisherman who had recently married his childhood sweetheart Moronik. Alabi and Moronik had been trying for a child for months, but their efforts had been in vain. Despite the increasing pressure from the villagers to fulfill the curse and submit to the Nyama Twins, Alabi stood firm in his refusal. He loved Moronika deeply and could not bring himself to betray her by sleeping with the sea maiden. However, the burden of the curse weighed heavily on Moronika. As each month passed and she remained childless, her despair grew. She feared that without fulfilling the ritual, she would never be able to bear a child. The villagers began to whisper behind Alabi's back, blaming him for their continued misfortune. "Why hasn't he gone to the twins?" they muttered. "He's bringing the curse upon all of us." But Alabi remained resolute, torn between his love for Moronik and his duty to the village. He knew that if he continued to resist, they might never have the child they so desperately wanted. Yet the thought of betraying his wife filled him with overwhelming guilt. One fateful night, as the full moon shone brightly in the sky, Alabi found himself standing on the shore of the river, staring out at the dark, shimmering waters. The air was thick with the scent of salt, and the waves seemed to call to him, urging him to submit to the will of the sea goddess. He knew the Nyama Twins were near. "Are you here to fulfill your duty, young man?" a melodious voice asked from behind him. Alabi turned to see Omotunde and Omobola, their tails glistening in the moonlight as they floated gracefully atop the water. There was a strange beauty about them, a haunting allure that made it difficult to look away. "I am here," Alabi replied, his voice trembling, "but I cannot bring myself to betray my wife. Is there no other way for me to fulfill my duty to the village?" The Nyama Twins exchanged a knowing glance, their eyes gleaming with mischief. Without saying a word, they began to sing, their voices weaving together in a sultry, hypnotic melody. Alabi felt the pull of their song, that irresistible urge to submit to their will. His heart raced, and before he knew it, he was drawn into their embrace. That night, under the full moon's light, Alabi succumbed to the curse. He made passionate love to the Nyama Twins, his mind clouded by their magic. As the waves crashed against the shore, he felt a strange sense of both fulfillment and dread. He had betrayed Moronik, but he had also fulfilled his duty to the village. To Alabi's amazement, the following month, Moronik fell pregnant. The villagers rejoiced, celebrating the impending birth of a child. Alabi and Moronike were overjoyed, and soon they became the proud parents of a healthy baby boy. The curse, it seemed, had been satisfied. However, the Nyama Twins had tasted power, and they were not content to stop there. Over time, their demands grew bolder. They began insisting that the men of Ndarama visit them more than once in order for their wives to conceive. The once simple ritual became more frequent, and soon the village was engulfed in turmoil. The women of Ndarama grew increasingly resentful of the Nyama Twins. They watched with heavy hearts as their husbands were repeatedly drawn to the sea maidens, night after night, while they were left behind, consumed by anger and jealousy. Finally, the wives could take no more. They gathered together and approached the village elders, pleading with them to intervene on their behalf. "We cannot continue like this," one woman cried. "Our husbands are being taken from us and our families are being torn apart." The elders, though hesitant, knew they could not ignore the suffering of the village any longer. They decided to confront the Nyama Twins and beg them to lift the curse. Despite their efforts, the elders were unable to sway the Nyama Twins. The twins claimed that the curse was their mother's will, and they were bound to uphold it, no matter the cost. Desperate, the wives turned to a powerful sorceress who lived deep within the forest. This woman, known only as Zuwena, was famed for her knowledge of ancient magic and her ability to break even the most powerful curses. Zuwena agreed to help the wives, but warned them that the path ahead would not be easy. In order to break the curse, the wives would need to undergo a powerful ritual that would fortify them against the magic of the sea goddess and her daughters. For 7 days and 7 nights, the wives followed Zuwena's instructions, undergoing a grueling transformation. They were reborn from the ashes of their suffering, emerging stronger and more determined than ever before. With newfound strength, the wives marched to the shore, where Omotundi and Omobola lounged on the rocks, basking in the sunlight. Their tails shimmered, and they appeared as beautiful and untouchable as ever. But the wives were no longer afraid. "We have come to end this curse," one of the wives declared, her voice strong and unwavering. "We will no longer submit to your demands." The Nyama Twins laughed, dismissing the wives' threats. "You think you can defeat us?" Omotundi taunted. "We are immortal, born of the sea. You are mere mortals." But the wives stood their ground, fueled by the magic that Zuena had bestowed upon them. In a fierce battle that echoed across the shore, the wives fought the Nyama Twins with all their might. With each blow, they pushed the twins closer to defeat. Finally, with a mighty burst of energy, the wives succeeded in stripping Omotundi and Omobola of their shimmering tails. The Nyama Twins let out cries of anguish as they transformed from sea maidens into mortals, their powers slipping away. Just as the battle seemed won, the sea goddess Nyamwezi rose from the depths, furious at the defeat of her daughters. Her rage was palpable, and she summoned a massive wave, threatening to engulf the entire village. But Zuena, the sorceress, appeared beside the wives. Together, they unleashed a barrage of spells, trapping the sea goddess in a barrier of light. With a final cry of defeat, Nyamwezi vanished beneath the waves, taking her daughters with her. The curse was broken. The people of Ndarama erupted in celebration as the wives and the sorceress returned victorious. The curse that had plagued them for generations had been lifted, and the village could finally live in peace once more. The moral of the story was clear: respect for nature and boundaries is paramount. Had the villagers respected the sanctity of the river, they would never have been cursed. And the strength of the human spirit, especially when united, is capable of overcoming even the most insurmountable challenges. The wives of Ndarama had stood up against the powerful sea goddess and her manipulative daughters, proving that with determination and courage, anything was possible. The village of Ndarama continued its daily life, thriving in peace. The townsfolk gathered to celebrate their newfound freedom. They remembered the brave women who had stood against tyranny. Gratitude filled their hearts as stories of courage were passed down.